Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with my brutally honest opinion on Borderlands 3. If you'd like to go ahead and check out all of the gameplay I personally experienced, then do click the link in the description down below. It's almost 2 hours of Amara gameplay and it is fire. But anyway, as most of you know, myself along with a bunch of other YouTubers and Twitch streamers were flown out to LA to play Borderlands 3, and now I'm here to deliver the unfiltered opinion that I know a lot of you are looking for, getting rid of all the fanboy stuff, all the excitement from the event, because full disclosure, 2K did pay for my flight along with my hotel, but that doesn't have an impact on my opinion on the game, because when you sit down with the game, that's all that matters at that point in time, despite the incredibly kind gesture and favor that 2K did for myself and many other creators. Also, just so you guys know, this is obviously not my own gameplay, and in fact gameplay from the reveal that Gearbox showed off. And the reason for that is because when I asked Gearbox if I could record and stream, they said I could not. And when I tried to get into an earlier session to record raw gameplay for videos like this, they said I could not. So sadly, I was not able to get any raw footage. And full transparency, yes, I was quite bothered by that because I'm a YouTuber first, streamer second. But anyway, just know I do have to borrow the gameplay from Gearbox, and I cannot visually represent all the stuff I would like to be talking about in today's video. So let's get started right away and talk about the environments. That was the first thing that really popped out to me. It was the first note I took. Areas were far more expansive in the terms of verticality and overall environmental space. Now this was notable to me at first in the more subtle way, such as you'd see more catch-a-rides scattered about the level because you'd be using your vehicle more, and thus there was more of a chance of it blowing up with enemy encounters. AI assistance also now came in the form of vehicles following you around, which never have we seen before in Borderlands. Quests bring you high and low. There were specific areas created for specific side quests that no matter how small they were, it felt like there was additional focus there. And that's likely due to the fact that Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel were on the 360 and PS3, much less data and technology to work with there. We're now with this big leap towards the end of the next generation of technology. We're going to see some pretty expansive areas in Borderlands 3. An interesting variety of color was also there that separated the areas atmospherically. So Promethea, the planet that I was on and exploring for the duration of my first playthrough, is the same Molly 1 infested cityscape that you saw during the trailers and my in-depth analysis videos. However, you have to fight your way up from this acidic sewage area, which is a tonally green, to this cityscape and then into the heart of the war going on there. Despite being on the same planet, each location along the way felt focused yet different, and the sewage area that I mentioned earlier was vast and boasted verticality. Meanwhile, the cityscape was more tight and CQC focused, with hidden locations tucked along the street that you wouldn't miss if you did not get out of your vehicle. Now tonally, when it comes to dialogue, story, writing, my overall interpretation was that this game reminded me more of Borderlands 2 than 1. Now the reason I confront that is because rumor had it that it'd be more dry like 1, where 1 didn't have a ton of lore, but when they did go for humor, it was very dark, very sadistic. But the impression I received after playing the game and seeing the whole entire Borderlands 3 panel is that they had clearly taken more inspiration from the sequel. Hell, ladies and gentlemen, there was a quest where I helped a doctor turn into a rapper and got medication for him and all this crazy stuff. Like, it's clearly taking more inspiration from Borderlands 2 in the terms of craziness, wittiness, and all that stuff. Anyway, between the multiple action skills, builds, fire modes, sliding, tons of enemy designs, like an absurd amount in a short period of time, which has me super stoked, this easily has the chance to be the best Borderlands game ever in the terms of gameplay, and that was just off that raw hour and a half. And it didn't feel like it was a specific vertical slice, because there were some moments of technical faults, which I will get into in a little bit. But anyway, I feel as if each game from the Borderlands franchise is that they all had their own flavor. The pre-sequel featured the best movement. I felt that 1 Game of the Year edition had some real locomotion and improved gunplay that felt excellent. And then 2 features just this insane weapon variety and fantastic builds. And you could say that for Borderlands the pre-sequel. But anyways, 3 manages to blend the strongest elements from all of these games, minus pre-sequel's zero gravity from what I know, unless we end up going back to the moon again, into an incredibly fun time. The game felt good to play, and this was notable right off the bat. If you watch the gameplay that I linked down below, right when I start shooting guns, I note that one of the SMGs I had played like a gun from Call of Duty, which I think that may sound like a slap in the face to a lot of gamers because everyone stigmatizes Call of Duty. It's very negative to talk about it, but if there's anything good about Call of Duty, it's its gunplay. It feels good. It plays smoothly. And the fact that Borderlands 3, a RPG loot-driven game with so many other focuses, played like a strong first-person shooter is a huge step in the right direction for a game that, while it was so focused on guns, its gunplay never felt quite there. It wasn't bad, but it just was never quite there. So Borderlands 3 made a significant step forward in that department, and kudos to the team for getting that right. However, does it matter if your guns are amazing and it plays well if the AI is dumb as rocks usually, which is what I encountered quite a bit. And this is especially in vehicle combat where cars would just park into walls and that would be it. I'd just shoot them until they were dead. This often happened in combat where enemies would not navigate to me properly, or they'd climb up onto an object just to drop behind it immediately, then wrap around it and shoot me. There was really strange moves by the AI that showed clearly this game has a couple of months left to be finished, and I'm sure this is stuff that will be toned down a little bit over time, but I've never thought that Borderlands had the strongest AI, so this is something that I think Gearbox really needs to buckle down and get right, because while I did go down a few times, it was more so because there were hordes of enemies shooting at me rather than the AI actually challenging me. It wasn't this blatant problem in my face, but it's still something that I noticed when I was playing, and it was distracting because quite often the AI, like I said, would just brake and drive off the road and sit there and do nothing. Anyway, if you guys didn't know, I did play as Amara and only Amara. I did have the option to switch with Zane, but however, as a fan of Borderlands and as someone who plans on playing this game quite a bit and covering it quite a bit, and I know that 2K is going to have more events for these games, I planned on just playing as Amara because I did not want to spoil Zane and as many characters as I possibly could. So I shifted between her Phase Slam, Phase Blast, and Phase Lock. Phase Lock seemed like the most useful one for team play if you're playing online with a friend or split screen or whatever, and since this was a single player event, I mainly put my focus on what I thought was practical because I felt that was the most realistic scenario, which was the Phase Slam and the Phase Blast. Eventually, I unlocked an augment for my Phase Blast because I continued to invest skill points in that tree that were actually similar to Lilith from Borderlands 1, where I would get stacks for Rush, which would then give me movement speed and other skills that tied to reload speed. And Lilith in Borderlands 1 had a tree that really focused on getting around the area quickly and reloading your gun and constantly firing off SMG bullets. And so the augment that I unlocked actually allowed me to gain health through my Phase Blast, which then encouraged me to continuously use that because another skill on a separate tree reduced my cooldown. So then I'd be shooting off Phase Blasts left, right, and center, and it felt really good and powerful. However, what was even truly satisfying, arguably more than the Phase Blast, is the Phase Slam, which was an AoE attack that, holy smokes, decimated everyone around me, sent them flying on their butt, and I think many people are going to like that if they play Amara. It's probably going to be her go-to move because it just clears the room, it does a ton of damage. However, I did not like some of the skills attached to that move, so I decided to focus elsewhere. Now onto the technical stuff a little bit before we go back to parts of the game. So my performance personally was fine. I only encountered a bug that was a texture not loading during a cutscene. It was very hard to notice anyway, and probably the only reason I noticed it is because I was watching the game and playing it. Meanwhile, if someone was watching on Twitch or through YouTube, they probably wouldn't have caught it unless I directly pointed it out at that very moment in time. So it wasn't anything significant. However, I have a lot of friends who ended up playing this game too, and they told me they struggle with performance issues a lot. And one specific friend mentioned that they turned invisible, had a car land on them, and then died repeatedly until Gearbox came over, had to reset their game. So it was weird as hell, but I'm just putting it out there for awareness sake that there were some bugs when it came to frame drops, along with something freaky like turning invisible and getting crushed by cars. So do know this game, in the terms of the AI, as I mentioned earlier, and then some performance stuff, there were some issues there, which was to be expected at this point. But with the game having only 4 months left of development, you hope to see that type of stuff really stomped out. So I hope performance isn't something that bites this game in the butt. But what I really, I can't emphasize it enough, guys. Like, please, I really love the sound in this game. I adored it. It is fantastic. And it comes from the gun sounds, first and foremost. It was really hard for me to hear any of the music in game. It was way too loud, but the gun sounds. Why is this such a significant thing? Well, Gearbox made the claim that there were 75 100 gun sounds in this game, and I truly didn't appreciate that at the time when I heard that or understood what that really meant. I went from using a sci-fi sounding vortex shotgun that blasted my enemies away to an assault rifle that upon the clip fully emptying, which mind you is different from when you reload with 1 or 2 bullets left, would have a ping with the sound of an M1 Garand. It was very old school. It brought me back to World at War. I felt like I was 13 again. Elements were also distinguishable by sound too, where Frost had more of a crisp or edge to it, meanwhile the newly added Radiation was a bit more of a fuzz. Now this worked not only as audio feedback for the player when it came to our guns sounding and feeling good, but also identifying the weapons and elements of your enemies without having to take a look. And that truly takes a lot of focus on the design to quickly translate that data to the player and get them to quickly understand it and then use it as data to identify their surroundings and focus elsewhere. Those types of context clues are super important and show that a team understands good audio design. Speaking of which, Radiation is the new element in Borderlands, and it is awesome yet sadistically satisfying. It spreads from person to person and causes chain reactions of explosion. So if one person blows up, then you'll see the radiation spread to them, and if they die with that radiation, they will blow up and pass it on to someone else. I also noticed that explosive barrels aren't as sensitive. This is so important. Why is that, you may be asking? Because during my Lilith playthrough in Borderlands 1 Game of the Year Edition, I constantly went down since I'd set on fire because of one of my skills, and I would just touch one of the barrels, blow up, go down, my friend would have to come revive me. When I used my face slam, I didn't blow up any barrels. It was a miracle. It seems like they only react to guns and explosions as well as melee attacks where you can send the barrel towards your enemy instead of how it normally would blow up in your face. It sounds small, I get it, but it's a really good quality of life change that keeps you from constantly going down, because one of the biggest weaknesses of Borderlands, in my opinion, was it was a game that encouraged you to constantly go down because you'd have maybe a quarter health and you might as well just go down at that point, right? Because when you get back up, you'll have half health. But since the game doesn't constantly kill you in these freak ways, it's actually keeping you up, where you're going to want to focus on maybe using that augmented ability more often, replenishing your health that way. Because the barrels aren't constantly blowing up and killing you, maybe I'm the only one who has that problem. You can now avoid that and focus on just shooting your enemies and making them more of a strategic advantage. Now, Amara had unique dialogue with NPCs during quests, and it felt more interactive, and I can see our Vault Hunters actually growing as characters this way, and people attaching themselves to them, rather than picking up some random echo logs and sort of just filling in some blanks and it really not sticking with them. It's a vital quality of life change, and a welcome one at that, because sometimes you have that moment in Borderlands where your brain unplugs because everyone's talking at you instead of you talking with them, which is how it's going this time around. We saw a taste of that in the pre-sequel where, for example, we'd hear Athena talking to Lilith or Brick in Sanctuary on the Echo in a flashback form as the story progressed, but this is an approach that's much more hands-on and rather more importantly what we'd expect in a modern game. But don't get it twisted, because I feel a lot of the positivity for Borderlands 3 will be because it caught up with the time. It's a lot of maintaining what's special about Borderlands, but also certain aspects catching up with the time. However, I think there's a lot of great things about this game that are original, that are new. Like I said, its gun sound, the way you can interact with the environment, the new elements, the expansive environments, the tone, the quest. There's nothing quite like it, and that's owning its identity, but also building off of it. Now, last but certainly not least are the other quality of life changes that I did want to highlight. Admittedly, they're not super significant, but I feel they combine to improve your experience. So things like the Echo being used when accepting quests to actually project quest details, simply refilling your ammo at machines with the press of a button instead of going into them and separately filling everything, the backpack being on the opposite side of the screen from your current inventory so the HUD isn't as crowded and confusing even to this day after hundreds and hundreds of hours in Borderlands. This is great stuff to see, and also previewing skins before equipping them to your vehicles. I love this stuff. It's just a simple quality of life change that I think more hardcore fans will appreciate about the game. But just know, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't boil down to this game catching up with the times when it comes to the audio design, level design, gunplay, bosses, writing, characters. I see a lot of promise with this game, and like I said, given some of its technical state, it is a little less encouraging, but in a sense I found it a little encouraging on the side of, okay, they clearly didn't give us their most refined aspect of the game and said, okay, transform their thoughts, make sure they think this is the best thing ever and that this is representative of the final product. I thought this was a more transparent approach to the game and that we could expect to see this hopefully improve over time. But anyway, that is my brutally honest opinion on Borderlands 3. As you guys know, it's just unfiltered. I really enjoyed my time with the game. I really did. And I know you guys know I like Borderlands, but it's not like I'm this crazy fanboy about it. I'm just really happy that they seem to be nailing it. They seem to be doing what most AAA companies should be doing, which is taking their time with their game. And when I got my hands on it, man, and I looked at those skill trees, I looked at those weapons, I see hundreds of hours that could be sunk in this game, if not more, especially after the DLC comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at a game that's going to give you your bang for your buck, and I'm looking forward to playing more, hopefully down the line. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, do sound off in the comments down below. I find that very important to make sure I give you guys all the answers I possibly can if I didn't cover anything in this video here today. So do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that, as it fuels all the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.